distinguished academics, esteemed researchers, guest facilitators, ladies and gentlemen, a very cordial welcome to the 18th Multidisciplinary Seminar, institutionalized and hosted by the Research and Knowledge Management Office of St. Mary's University. It's a profound privilege to serve as your Master of Ceremonies today as we convene here at American Corner on our main campus at Addis Ababa. Today's symposium serves as a vital access for intellectual discourse designed to interrogate pressing contemporary challenges and advance cross-disciplinary seminars or scholarships. We express our profound gratitude to our preliminary speakers, session chairs, and delegates who have traveled from various sister institutions to enrich this forum with their empirical insights and intellectual rigor. To formally inaugurate today's proceedings and deliver the official opening speech, it is an absolute honor to call upon the Executive Vice President of St. Mary's University, Ato Tadla Haile. As a contemporary of our university's leadership, Ato Tadla works, it's better to talk something about, some very little thing about Ato Tadla. Ato Tadla works hand in hand with our visionary founders to champion academic excellence and institutional growth. Today, he joins us not only to launch this seminar, but also speak on behalf of an incredible journey, joyful campus community. Ato Tadla Haile serves as the Executive Vice President of St. Mary's University as a foundational cornerstone of the University Executive Cabinet. He works directly alongside the President to oversee institutional development, academic governance, and the strength expansion of the university local and international academic partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver this opening speech of the 18th Multidisciplinary Seminar and formally welcome the President Bank to please join me in resounding round of applause for our Executive Vice President, Ato Tadla Haile.
Dear Dr. Sarawit Andiso, Research and Community Engagement Chief Executive Officer at the Ministry of Education, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the 18th Multidisciplinary Seminar, giving due recognition to paper presenters coming from financial industry and NGOs. I would like to extend my appreciation to those coming from the regions: Ambo, Bahar Dar, Hawassa, Madda Walabu, Wallagga, and Waldia universities. Of course, not forgetting those from St. Mary's. As the seminar tag indicates, we are gathered here not just as subject specialists in our respective fields, but as a collective community of scholars driven by shared academic curiosity. As the theme has it, to have impactful outcome for the sustainable development, we need to engage in synergistic efforts of learning from each other's discipline. In today's technological world, linguists seek the assistance of computer science scholars who specialized in machine learning and vice versa. Equally, marketing data analysts seek the help of economists to find out the return on investment of marketing. Yet, no scholar escapes from the prudent use of AI, which has now become the common denominator for scholarly work. That said, I hope at this event, all of us will gain some knowledge while listening to paper presenters with an open mind after attendees ask probing questions that may trigger vibrant discussions. Finally, allow me to express my thanks to the seminar organizing team of the Research and Knowledge Management Office, which is tasked with handling 3 national and 1 international conference. My thanks also go to the Colonel John Robinson's American Corner, in which this event is being held. Wishing you all a successful seminar. I declare this event is open. This seminar is open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Talla, for those profound insight remarks. And once again, a heartfelt welcome to this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and fellow researchers, to lay the theoretical foundation for today's seminar and to contextualize our multidisciplinary seminar, we shall now proceed to our keynote speaker. It is my distinct privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for today, His Excellency Dr. Sarawit Handiso, the Research and Community Engagement Chief Executive Officer of the Ministry of Education, Ethiopia. Dr. Sarawit, extensive stewardship over national academic research and community development frameworks makes his presence here invaluable. Today, he will deliver an address that promises to challenge existing paradigms and offer novel frameworks for our subsequent discussions. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Sarawit Handiso, to the podium.
It's quite a colorful day. I am really grateful that, especially while I was thinking about the event that your esteemed university has organized. It's really an honor for me to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Ato Tadla Haile, Executive Vice President, Dr. Solomon, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, leadership of St. Mary University, university researchers, academia family, different government officials, private higher education institution leaders, and the brilliant minds from across our higher education institutions. All protocols observed, and very good morning. Just a couple of weeks from now, China has made a very massive announcement stating that lots of programs, especially programs related to technology, science, need to be modified. So they have to close more than 12,000 programs, stating that the previous programs are irrelevant for the upcoming world, the upcoming scientific technology and AI related world. Let me begin my speech by saying this important word. We are at a historic scientific juncture. Everything is turning around. Everything is changing. The coming 10, 15 years from now has no room for disciplinary research, because even the world is using a very different term to describe disciplinary research. The world calls it silos. There is no room these days for engineers to sit together and discuss about their own issues, especially issues related to engineering only. And the world no more see problems from linear aspects. Rather, interactive models are being encouraged. Thanks to St. Mary University, because St. Mary is actually serving as a beacon for academic excellence and a vital partner to the Ministry of Education. I have lots of friends here, lots of scholars who are shaping the country's policy through consultancy as well as on policy developments. So your contribution is still something that we should never forget to mention. So we are gathered here to speak a very important issue, especially people from different universities, different sectors. We need to see the alignment of the issue that we are discussing today, multidisciplinarity, or the issue of interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity. Everybody is quite concerned about it. Why is that the issue? This is something that we should talk about. Firstly, it's alignment with the reform that the country is undertaking. Yeah, lots of policy reform initiatives. To name them, research thematization, for instance, needs to see the issue of multidisciplinarity at the heart of its success. So every university, every higher education is to be successful. Thematization needs to be a very good thing to consider as far as relevance and impact is concerned. We speak a lot about quality of research. After all, how do we define quality when it comes to research? You know, we use, as a country, relevance to define quality itself. Because when you are saying fit for purpose, you are indirectly talking about relevance. So we are using relevance to define quality. How relevant is our research? How relevant is the technology that we are producing? So quality is when we are discussing, when we are having such an event, what needs to come to our mind is the relevance of the research. How do we define quality internationally? It's our visibility. How visible is our work to the entire world? In order to be visible, we need to think of intersections of various disciplines, because through innovations emanate from multidisciplinary research. The other thing is hatred. I can say the man behind hatred is among us, because he was, repeatedly advocating the issue of joint applied research, where researches need to be done in collaboration with the industry. The technology transfer issues related to innovation must consider what the country is aspiring through research. The other one is R2C, or research to commercialization. We don't do research for shelves. We don't do research even for the community. Yes, we do research with the community and for the community. These two things are issues that we should think of while we are having such a very important event. I also argue that the country issued a proclamation on autonomy, university autonomy. What is the essence of autonomy? The essence of autonomy is that universities must prove their societal and commercial relevance. Universities are there because we need to transform society. In order to do so, they are mandated to have three important missions: teaching, learning, research, community engagements. But these three missions are not the ultimate why they are established. It's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is change, transformation. So when they transform, again, these intermediate goals through which we are aspired to achieve our ultimatum becomes the targets themselves. Because of this, the measurement itself needs to be considered as we repeatedly advocate. Yes, education sector development plan, the sixth ASDP plan clearly advocates about multidisciplinarity. The National Digital Education Strategy, at the heart of it is still there is the issue of multidisciplinarity as far as we are talking about solving the systemic cross-sectoral bottlenecks. So, as my friend Mr. Dalla was mentioning, disciplinary researches are known. Any researcher who talks about climate change shall have in mind different various disciplines or experts in agriculture, environment, and meteorology. We don't tackle 21st century problems with 19th century silos. It's a failure. So the Ministry of Education recognizes that if our universities are remaining to be the engines of national development, we have to transform fast. But still some challenges remain. The first thing is the language barrier. Especially when we are talking about epistemological frictions. What engineers consider as hard science is considered as a part of the story for sociologists. So they must come together, feeling this miscommunication. Institutional inertia is the other issue. Everybody is thinking about territorial approach while having the picture of the country's problem in mind. There is a tyranny, I think you know this, a publication trip. And it's not only a trip, it's also a trap. Because everybody wants to have its paper published. It's a good trip. but it's also a trap. Because the world ceases to cherish publication if we are failing to see research from end to end. It has to be translated into solving the real societal problems above publications. So as a way forward, when you are having this very colorful day, I hope St. Mary's University as well as the stakeholders, researchers, must think of the following three important strategies in mind. Firstly, how structurally aligned is our general motto, actions, towards national frameworks. This is the first thing that we should think of. Secondly, how ready, how prepared are we to the digital barriers that the higher education system is currently facing? Thirdly, how do we manage, especially issues of funding, when it comes to research, because research is a very expensive enterprise. They say money talks, but we say it must talk in multiple languages. We have to see various avenues to fund a very urgent bottleneck and impactful research. So while we are having this wonderful conference, I urge you to be bold and step across the hall and ask yourselves, how does my world, my discipline, my view really relates to the rest of the disciplines or the experts in the room? That's really something that we should ask. Secondly, how impact-driven is this research, or the research that we are currently doing is something that we should ask. Is it relevant to the community? Is it relevant to the entrepreneur? Is it relevant even to the small circle that we are living in? That's something that we should ask. Thirdly, is it sustainable? Does it have meaning to the next generation? So as the Ministry of Education, we are committed to restructuring funding, creating collaborative platforms, and rewarding research that breaks boundaries. We want to thank St. Mary University once again for fostering this collaborative spirit and providing the ecosystem where these vital connections can be made over the course of the seminar. Let us, the few hours, not just to present papers, but to build partnership. Let's listen with curiosity, debate with respect, and collaborate with purpose. The breakthrough of tomorrow are waiting at the intersection of the ideas you will share today. Thank you very much, and I wish you a highly productive and transformative seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarawit, for that intellectually stimulating and evocative address. which has masterfully set the academic policy tone for this symposium. We shall now transition into the core empirical segment of our seminar with our first presentation. To ensure that highest standard of academic governance, time management, and critical synthesis, during this session, I am honored to introduce both the chairperson and the rapporteur. Presiding over this inaugural presentation as our session chairperson is Dr. Mosisa Kajala, Dean of School of Graduate Studies at St. Mary's University. With his extensive background in managing rigorous academic discourse and postgraduate scholarship, Dr. Mosisa will moderate the presentation, enforce the temporal parameters, and guide the subsequent question and answer plenary. Assisting in the meticulous demonstration, documentation, thematic synthesis, and capture of the intellectual outputs of this session is our designated rapporteur, Ato Fatana Shimalis, Dean of Faculty of Business and Economics at St. Mary's University. I would now like to formally invite our chairperson, Dr. Mosisa, and the rapporteur, Ato Fatana Shimalis, to take the chairs and outline the session ground, rule, and officially introduce our first presenters.
Good morning. According to the 18th Multidisciplinary Seminar first sessions, there are 3 research topics that are presented by different scholars drawn from St. Mary University, Waldia University, and Malta Walabu universities. Accordingly, I would like to invite Nuai Ayalo, lecturer at St. Mary University, to present his research on the topic entitled Competition, Risk-Taking, and Stability in Ethiopia Banks. Do size and capitalization matters? Then I would like to Nuai to present his paper.
My name is Nuai from Department of Accounting and Finance, here from in St. Mary University. So I'm going to present research work on bank competition, risk-taking, and stability. So welcome to my presentation. The title of the research is Risk Competition, Risk-Taking, and Stability in Ethiopian Banks. Do size and capitalization matters? As you know that competition in Ethiopian banks are increasing from time to time. That is due to liberalization of the financial sector, as well as due to an entry of new banks in the industry. Therefore, but there is little evidence whether this competition, increasing competition, contributes positively or negatively towards risk-taking and stability in the banking sector. So when it comes to the presentation outline, the presentation consists of the following contents: the background of the study, objectives of the study, the methodology, and the major findings, the conclusion, and finally policy implications and recommendations will be presented. Just to save our time, I'm going to rush to cover this presentation within the given time period. Ethiopian financial sector is predominantly bank-driven, which means around 96.3% of the total financial sector is dominated by banks. And the stable financial system is also essential for economic growth. In emerging economies like Ethiopia, banks drive economic development and financial market progress. Stable banks withstand with also shocks or any financial crisis and operate more efficiently than that of unstable one. A resilient banking system is also crucial, not only for fostering economic growth, but also for minimizing the vulnerability of financial institutions to crisis. The relationship between bank competition and risk-taking and financial stability has been the subject of ongoing debate, whether bank competition positively or negatively affects risk-taking and financial stability. Banking market competition also seen as a double-edged sword. In one hand, increasing competition may force banks to pursue riskier strategies. On the other hand, it may also derive greater efficiency. If there is competition in the banking industry, banks will become more efficient. There are also theories with this regard. Prominent theories, competition fragility theory. This theory argues that if there is more competition in the banking sector, it may force banks to reduce their profit or reduce their market power because of high competition. Therefore, if there is a competition, they reduce their profit. That competition may reduce the bank's profitability. So in order to preserve their profit, they may engage in risky activities. Higher risk-taking, they may engage in higher risk-taking activities, or they may lend for riskier borrowers. By doing that, their financial instability may reduce. Okay, so this is competition fragility theory, which means competition may negatively affect banks' stability. On the other hand, the other theory also argues that competition stability theory, which states that if there is more competition in the banking sector, banks will become more efficient and they reduce interest. If there is a competition, because of that competition, banks may force it to reduce their interest rate when they lend money. That may also positively improve stability by doing that. This suggests that competition forces banks to lower interest rate and thereby mitigating moral hazards and adverse selection among borrowers and reducing default risk and enhancing financial stability. So these are the two extreme theories with regard to bank competition and stability. The empirical and theoretical literature reveals that the impact of bank competition on risk-taking and stability is mixed and inconclusive. When you see empirical literatures done abroad and in Ethiopia, bank competition on risk-taking and stability is mixed and inconclusive. The Ethiopian banking sector is unique as compared to that of the global banking sector because still now we have no foreign banks. There is no adequate empirical evidence with this regard, whether the competition has positively or negatively affect the banking stability in Ethiopian banking sector. So there is no adequate empirical evidence in Ethiopia with this regard. Therefore, the study also examines the effect of size and capitalization on bank competition, whether those large banks and highly capitalized banks take higher risk or whether they are stable or not. Thus, the finding of this study contributes to the ongoing debate on the banking competition and risk-taking or that of stability, and provides insights for policymakers. The findings of this study may contribute for policymakers, regulators, regulatory bodies, just to need for effective regulatory measures and promote competition while mitigating that of excessive risk-taking. When it comes to the research objectives, this study examines the relationship between bank competition and risk-taking and stability of Ethiopian banks. The other objective is to evaluate the effect of bank size and capitalization on the relationship between bank competition and risk-taking in Ethiopian commercial banks. And there is also a hypothesis that is developed from theoretical and empirical literatures. There is a positive, the first hypothesis, there is a positive relationship between competition and Ethiopian bank risk-taking. And the second one, there is a negative relationship between competition and Ethiopian banks risk-taking. The third one is there is a negative relationship between bank size and Ethiopian bank risk-taking. And the last one is there is a negative relationship between bank capitalization and Ethiopian bank risk taking. When I come to the data and methodology, research approach, quantitative, the research approach used is quantitative research approach. And when I come to the sample, 31 Ethiopian commercial banks has been taken as a sample during the period of 2013 up to 2023, which includes private and that of state-owned banks. Islamic banks are excluded because of new establishment during the study period. And the data, the data that I used is bank financial reports and the macroeconomic data that was extracted from IMF, World Bank, and National Bank of Ethiopia. Research design, correlational design was used, and the data analysis, the study used dynamic panel data, specifically JMM. This model is expected to address endogeneity problem and observed heterogeneity, autocorrelation, and any kind of measurement errors. Besides descriptive research, descriptive statistics and peer correlation also used, and model tests has been also done. These are the variable measurements. Credit risk is the variables are, the dependent variables are credit risk and bank stability, which is measured using loan loss provision and Z-score, and capital, bank size, learner index, HHI, which measures concentration of banks, and HHI measures the concentration of banks with regard to asset concentration in the banking industry, and HHIL we used to measure the concentration of loan in the banking industry, and concentration 3 or C3 is also the variable that used to measure the concentration of the total assets of large banks in Ethiopia from the total assets of the banking sector.
There are 5 minutes, go through the 5 minutes.
Okay. This is the model. The study used 2 models, LLP as a dependent variable and Z-score, which we used to measure stability of the banking. This is the research output. When I come to the major findings of this study, loan loss provision, which is a dependent variable, which is used as also the lagged variable in the model. Lagged LLP not significant, which means past loan provision does not predict current provision, which means the bank's past loan provision does not affect the current loan provision, which is maintained by banks, which suggests that Ethiopian banks adjust provision, loan loss provision based on regulatory requirements. The second dependent variable, which is bank stability, which measured by using Z-score. Z-score has positive and significant. That is, banks with higher stability tend to remain stable over time, which shows that there is a persistence in the banking stability, even if the credit risk provisioning is unpredictable. Bank competition and concentration risk taking, which is bank competition measured by learner index, which is market power, which measures market power. Higher market power, which indicates that low competition, measured by learner index, has a positive and significant impact on the credit risk, which means that banks with higher market power, that is low competition, engaged in riskier loans, that is high loan provisions. Weak competition reduces discipline and high lending rate. If there is weak competition, banks can charge high lending rate on borrowers. Banks lend to riskier borrowers because of that. If there is high interest rate, they attract riskier borrowers. So negative bets a negative but significant effect on stability. Yeah, this market power has no effect on stability of banks. That is, market power does not affect the overall financial stability of banks in Ethiopia. The other variable is asset market concentration, which is HHIA, positive and significant impact on credit risk, which means if banks concentrate majority of assets in the industry, this may positively contribute on the credit risk. Higher concentration, higher moral hazard, and weak credit discipline in the banking sector. Supporting the view that market dominance can encourage moral hazard, supports the competition stability hypothesis, more competition, lower credit risk. The other variable is C, which is top 3 banks asset share and loan market concentration used in the stability model. Concentration of assets among top 3 banks negatively impacts stability of the banks, which means if the banking sector dominated by the banking sector's asset dominated by top 3 banks, this may negatively affect the stability of the Ethiopian bank industry, or it may create systemic risk in the banking sector. Therefore, with regard to concentration, loan concentration increases stability, whereas asset concentration by top 3 banks reduces stability of banks. So not all concentration behaves the same. These findings are particularly relevant in Ethiopian banking sector, which is highly concentrated. For example, if you take CBE, which dominates 50% of the market share in Ethiopia, therefore, this concentration may engage those banks to take excessive risk. The other one is bank capitalization in size, the size of banks and their capitalization. High capitalized banks increases risk taking. That is, well-capitalized banks may engage in riskier lending activities. That is due to moral hazard or by knowing that they have sufficient capital to absorb potential loss. Okay, those capitalized banks may engage in riskier activities in Ethiopian context. No significant impact on stability actually. Larger banks take more credit risk. In Ethiopian banks, larger banks participate or engage in riskier activities in Ethiopian banking industry. This may be due to moral hazard. They may assume that they are too big to fail. Or they may expect government bailout in the case of financial distress. Since they are too big or they are more important bank in the industry, they may engage in riskier activities. Larger banks are more stable. Whereas even if they are risk taker, they are stable in Ethiopian context. The stability comes because of diversification or economies of scale and so on. Actually, these are the control variables: profitability, funding structure, ownership, macroeconomic impacts are the control variables that are used in this study. Profitability, that is measured using return on assets, significantly reduces credit risk. That is, when the companies become profitable, their credit risk will reduce. Supporting bad management hypothesis, profitable banks typically have superior risk management, obviously, risk management practice. The other one is funding structure, which is measured using the debt to total asset ratio and loan to asset ratio. Ownership, privately owned banks tend to have lower credit risk compared to state-owned banks. And macroeconomic impact, GDP growth reduces credit risk by enhancing borrowers' repayment capacity. So these are the major findings, and based on these major findings, the following recommendations are forwarded. The regulatory bodies should have to promote healthy competition in the banking sector. Policymakers should have to monitor, regulate, and market concentration levels to balance competition and stability, and discourage excessive risk-taking by dominant banks or those large banks. Banks should have to strengthen their risk assessment framework to ensure consistent provisioning policy and mitigate any kind of unpredictable risk exposures. And the regulatory bodies should have to monitor large or systemic banks. Okay, since they are engaged in riskier activities, they should have to monitor closely their strategies, their governance should have to be oversight by regulatory bodies. And the regulatory bodies should have to apply also macro-prudential policies that may be used to stabilize the overall the banking industry. This is all about. Thank you very much.
The next topic of presentation is the evolving landscape of copyright in the digital age, lesson from the UK, China, and South Africa for regulating AI-generated work in Ethiopia. The presenter is Alamu Balcha Adunya from Madda Walabu University. I would like to invite Alamu.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair. And again, it's a great pleasure to be on board with all audience. And now I will try to bring to your attention the issue of the evolving landscape of copyright, the lesson from UK, China, and South Africa for regulating AI-generated work. I think I should better start. So, as you may see from the slide, obviously, the issue of technology is obviously posing a number of challenges to every perspective, to which legal aspect is not an exception, right? So I'm just here to talk a little bit about the evolving landscape of copyright in digital ages and whether we need to extend protection to those works that generated by AI or otherwise, right? Because we are just being challenged with AI-generated theses, everything else, and then I will talk a little bit over it. So here is the short presentation outline, which starts with some background information and then come to some concluding remark at the end. Now, to begin with my presentation, obviously, artificial intelligence technologies, AI, as I've already mentioned, are just posing a number of challenges to every perspective, including laws, legal issues. One of the aspect perspective in legal issue where AI poses challenges intellectual property, I mean. And in fact, I'm not here to talk about all aspects of intellectual property, but I can find my discussion to copyright, whether the copyright regimes that we have in place really accommodate the issue of AI-generated works or otherwise. And if not, how we should also regulate, and how South Africa, China, and the UK regulate the issue, approach the issue that I will bring to your attention. Obviously, the traditional copyright regime that we have in place globally, and even in our case, based itself is on anthropocentric approach, in a sense that it is there to protect the creation of human intellect, right? And now AI, obviously, is not human. It has no consciousness, emotions, and so the issue as to whether AI-generated work should be protected or not is really very perplexed. Now, within a second, ChatGPT could produce an article, Martha's thesis, everything. We can produce a book using AI. So are we in a position to protect those work that generated by AI? Yes. And again, even AI gives us what we already trained in, right? So is that really not copyright infringement? To use copyrightable work to even train AI? Because we have to train AI. Then after it gives us something, right? So the second question is really even using copyrightable works of the other to train AI, not copyright infringement. So how the worldly community really address the issue is the question that I will bring to your attention. And now obviously, the AI poses a number of issues in copyright, including the issue of authorship on the work that generated by AI, by the way. Yes, the AI itself, the one who generated it. And again, what about the issue of originality? What about the issue of creativity? All this need to be addressed. And now, coming to the Ethiopian legal system, the copyright regime that we have, Proclamation 14 of 2004, and its amendment of 2014, did not address these issues, by the way. So the issue as to whether AI-generated work should be protected by copyright, or even the work, training AI to use copyrightable work is really copyright infringement or not is not regulated in our case. So the issue of authorship, ownership, copyright infringement, and even commercial exploitation of AI is something that needs to be addressed. So the objective of this paper is really to examine the legal status of copyright, AI-generated works, and the Ethiopian legal framework in the lens of, in fact, the experience of selected jurisdictions. In doing so, I will bring to your attention the arguments against and pro protection of AI-generated work, and then I will look at the experience of those selected jurisdictions, and I will bring to your attention at least one practical case in a jurisdiction in relation to how they really regulate the issue of AI-generated work. And finally, I will try to show the gaps of Ethiopian legal framework and then propose some policy recommendation, at least to handle the issues in our case. Methodologically, I'm from law school, in fact, so we have our own peculiar methodology, in fact. We have two typical methodology, doctrinal and non-doctrinal. By non-doctrinal is what you call empirical research in our case. And as far as sources are concerned here, you may see that both primary and secondary sources are employed. You may wonder as to how is primary source, because I know that for other disciplines, laws are secondary sources, but for us, for legal scholar, for law school, it is primary source. We do have two primary sources. One, laws. Second, the usual primary source in other disciplines are primary source. So here when I say primary source, I'm referring legal framework, laws, not other sources, because I didn't collect any empirical data. And again, as far as the comparative jurisdiction is concerned, UK, China, and South Africa from Africa are purposely selected because they do have a very ample experience on the regulation of AI-generated work. Now, let me bring to your attention the dilemma, the debate in relation to whether AI-generated work should be protected or not. Those arguments against protection of AI-generated work base themselves on the very objective of copyright itself. Copyright protection extended to the authors to incentivize them, to reward them for their works of human intellect, their intellectual efforts. Now, obviously, when we come to AI, it has no consciousness, emotions, personality. It is not human. Therefore, extending protection to AI-generated work is even against the very purpose of copyright protection itself. Right? And because the traditional copyright regime based itself is on anthropocentric approach, it protects author, human being, by the way. So there is no room for protecting non-human creators like AI. So those who argued against the protection of AI-generated work based themselves on the very purpose of copyright protection itself. And then the second argument against the protection of AI-generated work is that if we extend protection to AI-generated works, we are discouraging those who use their human intellects to produce something. Because it may take 1 year to produce a single article, by the way, for one human being. But within 1 day, within a second, AI can generate an article, a book. So if we extend protection to such kinds of works, we are undermining, we are just discouraging those who exert their human intellect to produce some articles. So the second basic argument is this. But contrary to this argument against the protection of copyright, AI-generated works, there are argument in favor of the protection of AI-generated work. One of the basic justifications for those who argue in favor of the protection of AI-generated work is on technological enhancement. AI is technology. We cannot escape, rather. So unless we extend protection to those work that are generated by AI, we are just discouraging technology. So for the sake of enhancing technology, we have to extend protection to those work that are generated by AI. The basic argument for those who argued in favor of the protection of AI-generated work. The second argument is that regulation by itself creates certainty. So for the sake of at least creating certainty for the business person, for every stakeholders, we need to regulate such kinds of. We need to extend protection to AI-generated work. Now, there is a dilemma. Choosing one from the two is very perplexing. And so let me bring it to your attention the experience of those selected jurisdictions like this. And when we take United Kingdom, obviously they have the Copyright Design and Patent Act of 1988. If we look at that legal regimes, they have at least a provision to accommodate the issue of AI-generated works. They have explicit provision to computer-generated works, which could apply for what we call AI-generated works. Now, AI is not new issues there in other parts of the world, by the way. It's in the 1950s that the issue were in place, obviously, as you know. But in our case, it seems as though it is just something that emerged yesterday or today. But that is not the case. Right? Thanks to the father of AI, Joan McCarthy, This in 1950s, from 1950 up to 56, that the issue were already merged, and now those jurisdictions in other countries were proactive in addressing the issue of computer-generated work. So if we look at UK now, they have a provision which could be interpreted to accommodate what we call AI-generated work. They have already addressed the issue of computer-generated work. When I bring to your attention one very known case in UK, Nova Production Ltd and Mazoma Games Ltd of 2007, the court given a verdict that a computer-generated image should be protected by what we call copyright regimes. So there is a precedent in UK. So there is a room for AI-generated work to be protected in UK, by the way. But if some work is generated by AI, who will be the author? Who will be the owner? The one who made significant contribution in the arrangement of the work that generated by AI will be considered as the author, by the way. Then when we come to China, China follows the pragmatic approach and flexible approach on this end. China simply protects AI-generated work if and only if the author has significant contribution in that work. So we have to compare the contribution of AI and the contribution of the author in that work. So if the contribution of the author outweighs the contribution of that AI, there is a room for the work that generated by AI to be protected in China. That is, by the way, one famous case in 2019 in relation to Tencent and Shanghai cases. In this case, the court gave a verdict that AI-generated works, AI-generated articles should be protected in a sense that the author has significant contribution than that AI. So if the contribution of the author is 50 plus 1, right, there is a room for AI-generated work to be protected in China. The same is true in the latest case of 2023, whereby AI-generated image were protected. Coming to South Africa has again like that. So UK have a provision for the regulation of computer-generated works, whereby AI-generated work could be interpreted, could be accommodated through interpretation in that. But South Africa is by the first country in the world to extend patents to the work that generated by AI. Yes. So they are flexible in accommodating, in giving recognition to the work that generated by AI. And you can read Dava's case in South Africa, a very famous case. You can Google it and read the history of the case and how the court handled the issues. And so in South Africa, in Dava's case, the AI-generated innovation were protected under the patent regimes. And in fact, it's not somehow related to copyright, but it has some relevance in how far South Africa are flexible in accommodating, in giving recognition to AI-generated work. Then coming to the Ethiopian legal regimes, as I've already mentioned, the copyright regime of 2004 and this amendment has not regulated these issues. So the issue as to whether AI-generated work should be protected or not, and even the issue as to whether using the copyrightable work to train AI or not is copyright infringement or not is not regulated. By the way, Japan has a very interesting experience on providing, using copyrightable work to train AI as an exception to copyright. Copyright gives moral and economic right for the author, but that right is not absolute right. There is exceptions. Likewise, Japan provide explicitly using AI-generated, using the copyrightable work to train AI as an exception to copyright protection. So, accordingly, the key finding is that Ethiopia has not ready to really fight the challenge that could be posed by AI-generated works. From the comparative jurisdictions experience, we can understand that we have to balance the two, by the way. Yes. Sorry. Because overly restrictions of AI-generated work or denying protection for AI-generated work could hinder technological development. In the other hand, absence of regulation could lead to uncertainty and even discourage technology. So we have to balance the two. Accordingly, it's recommendable for Ethiopia to just, I'm running out of the time, amend its copyright regime to at least regulate the issue of AI-generated work in a sense that one, clarifying the issue of authorship, ownership, and even explicitly regulating the issue of whether using copyrightable work to train AI could constitute copyright infringement or whether it should be provided as an exception like that of Japan. Alternatively, at least having the comprehensive legal framework on the issue could take time, but temporary recommendation is that it's better to really at least empower the courts and the regulatory agency to interpret the use of AI-generated works flexibly at least, because we cannot escape technology. We have a national AI policy. We are on a verge of establishing AI university. AI mining will continue, so I think we have to think of such kinds of issues. This is all what I have. Thank you so much.
We'll proceed to the third presenter. The topic of the presentation is FinTech, integration and financial inclusion among micro entrepreneurship in Nakamte City, assessing the role of digital credit in liberalization economy. It is presented by Guddata Abarrachali from Waldia University.
Okay, thank you very much for your invitation. My university is Wallagga University, not Waldia. It's Wallagga University, okay? I have seen on the schedule also. My topic of presentation is financial integration and financial inclusion among micro-entrepreneurs in Nakamte City, assessing the role of digital credit in liberalizing the economy. Let's bring your attention to financial inclusion and then access to digital credit by micro-entrepreneurs or business traders. So the presentation outline are this one, introduction context is there, statement of the problem, research question and objectives, methodology, key finding, finally, conclusion and the recommendation is there. So when I start from the introduction part, regarding the digital inclusion and the financial innovations, the majority of business organizations are normally using Telebot and M-Pesa normally in our country context in order to do their business transactions, especially for purchasing inventory, especially for payment of different expenditures. They use the financial transactions, especially the digital platforms, especially Telebot and M-Pesa. So Nakamte City as a center of Western Ethiopian, as a market center, in that city, there are majority of traders or micro-entrepreneurs who process their digital transactions through Telebot and M-Pesas. So the trade volume is rapidly migrating to digital platforms to mitigate cash handling risks and liquidity shortages. That means the majority of financial activities or business transactions are performed by digital platforms, especially, as I've said, that Telebot and M-Pesa are there. But the problem in the statement of problem I have identified is the fintech credit paradox is there. That means majority of traders or micro-entrepreneurs are using the digital payments activities, but also majority of their money or financial transaction historical data are stored in Telebot. They have no access to get digital credit because of lack of regulatory policy normally that mandates these traders in order to get access to digital credit. That means they pay the money through the digital platforms, but they have no access to digital credit. So the majority of the payments are cleared. That means they pay through Telebot and the M-Pesa platforms or API services, but they have no access to get credit because of the policies that support to get access to that credit by using the digital platforms. Also, they have deposited majority of the money on the digital platforms. They lack access to get credit. That means they have ample millions on the financial transactions, especially in digital credit or digitalization. That means the formal bank, especially any banking industries or microfinance institutions, pays only or give credit by using only collateral provisions. That means they may use land or buildings in order to grant credits. Also, the majority of traders have a large number of money on the digital storage, especially on Telebot and M-Pesas. So traders generate massive transactions by using digital services. High velocity of digital transaction history are stored on the Telebot and M-Pesas, but this data remains siloed from telecom services. That means there is no financial integration between telecom service servers and the banks that show the financial or historical data of the traders. So since July 2024, foreign exchange liberalization increases inputs without credit. Digital divide will widen However, profound paradox exists, as I have said, that the majority of traders will process through digital platforms, but they lack access to get loan. So the research questions and objectives are here. Normally, how does frequency of mobile usage correlate with business turnover of traders in Nakamte city? What are institutional and technical barriers that will affect the local banks, or especially Ethiopian banks, to grant digital credit? That means alternative credit scoring must be available. To what extent digital literacy affect willingness of micro entrepreneurs to transition from cash-based to credit-based digital systems? So the objectives are normally to analyze the current state of fintech adoptions or financial technology adoptions by micro entrepreneurs in informal economy, to identify variables that affect the banks not to grant the credit based on the digital or historical data. When I come to materials and methods, the research design in normal explanatory sequential design, mixed design, that means I have used both qualitative and quantitative, especially first primary data was collected from the micro entrepreneurs. Then semi-structured interview was conducted with managers of some sample banks in the city. The study area was Nakamte city, East Wallagga zone, Oromia region, and Ethiopia. This area was purposefully selected because it is, I have said that, Western commercial central hub that has different trading services, or there are majority of trading business in the city. So approximately there are 10,000 micro entrepreneurs in Nakamte city. A sample of 384 respondents were selected by using the Yemane formula. Actual response rates out of 334, there are 368 sample valid responses given for researcher. And the stratified random sampling was made because the micro entrepreneurs were classified into different sectors. Trade, industry, and the commercial hubs are there. So the data collection methodology was made by using questionnaire and interviews. And the questionnaire was used to collect data from the traders or micro entrepreneurs in the city. Semi-structured interview was made with managers, sample banks, Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, Awaj Bank, and Oromia banks, because these banks are giving some digital services based on the customer deposits, especially. Data analysis tools was made by a statistical package for software social science, version 28. Okay. So thematic coding was used in order to analyze the interviews from the managers. So the data collection was rigorous. Survey provide highly reliable with a Chrome batch alpha value of 84.2. That means the questionnaire was measured well. So when I come to result and discussion, the status of financial technology adoption was very good by micro entrepreneurs, but although they use or they have high amount of digital transaction historical data on labor services, they have no access to get or obtain credit from banks based on their response. High transactional usage is there, but low transformational usage is there because of no access to get credit by using the historical data of the micro entrepreneurs, because the banks have no any information regarding the digital informations about the labor services for the traders or micro entrepreneurs. This is normally status of adoption. When I come to correlation and analysis or relationship between different factors, I have said that there are institutional and technical barriers that influence adoptions and the usage of these digital technologies. So financial technology and digital literacy have strong positive correlations at 74.2. This shows that high digital usage indicates high business revenue. When I come to financial technology and credit access, there is weak positive correlations. Only 18.4 relationship is there between credit access and the financial technology. That means also they adopt the financial technology usage to process their business transactions. the access to get credit by that, the digital technology is not high, so there is weak positive correlations. So, especially among the variables that influence access to credit, financial intensity usage is very high, but regulatory policy is a major factor or determinant factor that influences the banks are unable to grant credit because of lack of policy mandates that support digital credit. That is a big issue. So the qualitative part also supports the manager's response that to give the credit or to grant credit, they depend only on collateral liquidity. That means they have information about land or building titles and they only grant credit, but they don't use any digital scores to provide credit for the traders. So there is system silos, I have said that. That means the information about the business men and them in the tailor services are not available to banks. So they are unable to get any information to use that as evidence for granting digital credit. So conclusion, Nakamte City traders are heavily digitalized. That means 84% of cash flow captured, but excluded from capital markets. That means they have no access to get credit by using the digital storage. So rapid transaction, financial foreign exchange liberalization requires small businesses to be resilient without credit. They face predatory informal lenders because of maybe strict rule and regulation must be kept for keeping security of the businessmen. Unbankable asset is there. That means also the financial information are stored on the telecom services that was not used as collateral for getting access to the loan for businessmen. So paradigm shift through financial inclusion must evolve from merely granting access to account to granting access to capital. So when I come to recommendation for National Bank, mandate open banking framework to legalize alternative credit scoring for banks, for commercial bank, shifting from asset-based to cash flow-based lending via API integrations for fintech providers such as Telebr and M-Pesas, developing specialized business wallets. That means the historical data of the traders must be provided to the banks in order to know the asset accumulated in the telecom services. For local governments, launching credit building transparency, literacy campaigns for micro entrepreneurs. So these are my recommendations and all about presentation. Thank you very much.
Now the floor is open for comment and questions.
According to your topic, I was expecting the kind of structural equation modeling because you are expected to capture the direct and indirect effects of a bank size and capitalization on those dependent variables, and why you actually overlooked that. And again, the market power has no effect on bank stability. I think this one needs a very strong argument, and it also needs a kind of foundational evidence. For Alamu, especially for NOI, too big to fail may not be kind of assumption for us because the credit risk is not that an issue in our case. I think you have to go back for that. For Alamu, thank you very much again. China, UK, South Africa or Southern Africa? If these three countries are taken as best practice, so which one do you think is more suitable for us if we are expected to adopt those policies? For Jetta, I was trying to capture up. Where is it, Jetta? Yeah. So that payment and credit paradox in relation to especially Telebr, I was wondering what happened in that particular area, because Telebr has already the credit service. Do you think it is really because of the regulation that financial inclusion or credit access problem happened? And why you overlooked the transaction cost of, especially the interest, the cost of capital of those platforms in your study? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm Freu from Awash Bank. I have one question for the first presenter. I don't know whether I catch your point or not. High capital banks have high risk taking, as you have said on your finding. But the actual thing is not like that. For example, small banks are taking high risks because, for example, for instance, small banks taking fixed time deposits to get their target by deposit from other banks. So small banks are taking high risks when they are related with that of large banks. This may be not the actual thing what we are seeing in a bank. The next question is for the third presenter. It is possible to migrate their deposit from Telebill to banks to their bank account if they want credit services. So is that obstacle to get credit services from Telebill that much? That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments and suggestions. So I try to reflect on questions raised from the audience, starting from the first question, which is raised by Dr. Dems, regarding with the data period up to 2013 to 2023. The reason why I included this period is because of availability of data, and the study was accomplished in year 2023. Okay, so this is the first reason. Regarding with the data model, I used JMM. Actually, previous studies has been also used this model because it captures a lot of econometric problems. So maybe using other alternative model may provide another findings, so that may be open for further research. The second one, which is raised from my friend, the first, high capital relate with high credit risk. How high capitalization relate with credit risk taking? I think this is what, is that your, did I get you?
No, my question is, small banks are taking the high risk when you are comparing with us and large banks.
My finding is larger banks takes higher risk. Yeah. But in practice, you are saying that small banks take higher risk.
They take fixed time deposit by high interest rates.
Okay.
To fulfill their deposit requirements.
Okay. So actually, we need to have adequate evidence whether small banks take excessive risk as compared with that of large banks. So we need to have adequate evidence with that regard just to say such kinds of conclusion. Actually, the findings of this study provide us, which supports that large banks takes high risk. Okay, the reason is why, because of too big to fail hypothesis. That means larger banks assume that they are more important for the banking sector. For example, you can take Commercial Bank of Ethiopia. If the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia fails, it may affect the entire banking system. Okay, that is systemic bank. That's why larger banks may take higher risk. Okay. The third one is the type of data I use. Basically, I used secondary data only, the financial reports, the financial statements of the data. The third question, which is raised from another audience. So financial statements are the data that are used, and the number of banks included in the study was 31 commercial banks, okay, including those private and state-owned banks. I think larger banks take higher risk. That is the justification that I forwarded for the second question. And the limitation of the study, yeah, the effect of regulation is not addressed in this study. Okay, that can be one limitation. The regulatory issues, the impact of regulation on the competition is not addressed in this study, so I can take this as a limitation of this study. So this is all about my reflection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. The question is a very valid question, by the way. In fact, I will accept the comment in relation to South Africa or Southern Africa. I will consider it. Thank you for that. And when it comes to the answer in relation to the question, in fact, all selected jurisdictions have their own takeaway for Ethiopia. In fact, there is a takeaway that they can take from those 3 jurisdictions. But if I have to pick one from these 3 jurisdictions, China is very preferable, because beyond recognizing AI-generated work, it provides the standards even under which AI-generated work should be protected. If we look at other jurisdictions, they didn't go detail and even provided the standards, the parameters under which those AI-generated those AI-generated work should be protected. But if we look at China, they have explicit standard parameters, and so I prefer that jurisdiction from those 3 jurisdictions if I have to pick one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. There were 2 questions raised for me regarding the payment credit paradox. Is that the issue of regulation? As one question from my friend. So any organization, especially the financial sectors, are regulated by National Bank of Ethiopia normally. All banks are granting credit based on the rules and the regulations that are formulated or directed by National Bank. So in order to grant the credit based on digital scored data of the businessmen, there must be a regulation that supports this to implement. Without any regulation, banks cannot apply. Also, this is good experience. If we see experience of China, for example, Kenya, South Africa, Indonesia, India, the majority of the bank in that countries use the credit information, especially digital stored data, to grant credit. So unless National Bank allows this, bank cannot apply. So the regulation may be an issue here. So regarding transaction costs, that may be another factor that is forwarded for future researchers. Any person who have an interest can include as one variable, as a factor that influence adoption of financial technology by businessmen. The second question, migrating credit, migrating deposits from Telebr to the bank is possible. Well, my friend said that without the consent of the customers. Is that possible? That is also my question. Without the consent or the agreement of the customers, can telecom can migrate the digital score from Telebr to the bank? That is one question. It needs also allowance, or it needs rule and regulation, agreement with the customers, with Telebr to migrate from Telebr to the customer's bank accounts in order to take it as collateral. So interest of the customers is very important. I have said that as a recommendation, I put one, business wallet creation is good. That means the information is stored on Telebr service. Telebr software must be, may be integrated with the bank system. So creating the common business wallet for our customer to calculate alternative credit scoring for customer is very important. So this is my recommendation and all about my response. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, presenters, for your resourceful and inspiring presentations, as well as active participation of participants. We are joined our presentation here. Thank you very much.